Week 7 was one of the most exciting weeks of the season in terms of context, but also in terms of emerging players who factored into big wins. I've got Aaman Patel joining me to talk about this week's Emerging Player of the Week and all of the potential candidates for Emerging Player of the Week. Aaman, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, another exciting weekend. I think every week we always see new youth talent emerge, which is always great to find these new youngsters. And I think we saw plenty of old names resurface and some new names come to life. You know, we had Saideep Ganesh, who had just won Emerging Player of the Week just a couple weeks back. He scored 68 off of 50. He was really impressive for the East Bay Blazers. His teammate Sanjay Krishnamurti is starting to come into some nick now. 75 off 25 over the weekend. He had that all those 75 runs in one match. Didn't bat in the first game they played against SoCal, and he also took 2 wickets. And then you got guys like Heath Richards, you know, who's starting to come into his own, who had 6 wickets over the weekend. So I thought it was a really impressive weekend all around.
Yeah, no question. And there were even other guys. Yeah, Kartik Pelly taking 4 wickets. And then let's talk a little bit about, we got a lot of action going on this weekend that's going to determine playoff seedings and playoff, entry at all. Probably the biggest hotspot in the league for playoffs this weekend is Church Street Park in Morrisville, where all 3 of the teams in the race for 2 slots in the South will be meeting this weekend. I mean, it all comes to a head right now. It's great scheduling, really, at this right now, that they're all going to be playing together. Morrisville having 4 games, the Lightning only having 2 games, both against Morrisville, and the Atlanta Fire having to play 3 games, 1 against Morrisville and 2 against Fort Lauderdale, who will also be in town playing in over the weekend. We have 6 games here in North Carolina. Now, last weekend, to get us to this point, we had some, you mentioned Heath. We had some players who really factored into the results last weekend. Heath, one of them, but for the Morrisville Raptors, we had 2 under 20. Actually, we had more than 2 U21 players that really played a big role in that game. Let's talk a little bit about those Raptors.
Yeah, I think Aditya Badala is a name that's kind of been overshadowed a lot on that Raptors lineup, and he had a big weekend. And you look at the bowling, only 1 wicket, but when you talk about what that wicket was, it was Rakeem Cornwall, who at that point hadn't been dismissed very much in this tournament, smashing 6s all over the ground. Nick Hill, who I was commentating with, had brought up the stat that he had more 6s in minor league cricket than 4s, which is just a surreal stat. And Aditya Badala gets him out early and just kind of takes that game away. And then against the Atlanta Lightning in a chase where Dame Pete scored 48 off 34, the hero scored the winning runs. Aditya Badala with 3 clutch boundaries and a huge 6 in the second to end the second to last over that just changed the game in favor of the Morrisville Raptors. I thought he was impressive. And I know your guy, Matthew Ford, came in a big way for the Morrisville Raptors as well.
Yeah, they brought him in because Kezi Archibald is with the Windies A team. Congratulations there, Kezi. Matthew Ford coming into your team as both a U21 and, in this case, this past weekend, a wild card player. That's a massive addition to a team. It's kind of crazy that he wasn't in the league this season up until now. Yeah, but he comes in and he makes a difference in both games. And the first game, he takes 2 key wickets in the final over that kept that game. Now, Morrisville won on the final ball in the chase. Before that, he was kind of expensive, but he came through when it mattered the most, kept the game close, and they ended up winning on the very last ball. So that over was humongous. Then the very next game, he scores 21 off of 11, I think, helping the Raptors set a target that the Fire were unable to chase.
Yeah, I mean, again, you hit it right on the head. It's just the difference that these players make. And Matthew Ford coming in, that's his first games of the season last year. For those of you who don't really remember the name or wonder why it's familiar, the first guy to take a hat trick ever in minor league cricket. He comes in, somehow was not on the side, and like you said, made an impact right away. Those 2 wickets are 2 dot balls in a final over, which are always hard to come by. And, that kind of kept the game in the balance for the Morrisville Raptors. And then his 21 runs just gave them a little bit more fuel to keep the likes of Rakeem Cornwall away from chasing that total down.
A couple of other names to mention in the emerging player category, which, by the way, this award isn't so much for emerging players in the literal sense. It is for players who are in the U21 and U19 categories. So any player in that category right now that they're eligible, including guys who have made the USA men's team before. Actually, earlier in the season, we named Simon Kamala as the emerging player of the week. He's already played for USA. cricket. So this award is more to recognize the best U21 and U19 player or U19 player in the league. So yeah, a couple of other good names in that category for the Raptors that stood up big this weekend was Abram Bulacetti, who joined Matthew Ford at the very end of that first innings against the Fire to set that high total when things had lagged a little bit. They both stepped in and brought the run rate up. And then we have Rohan Fadki, who bowled well in that.
Yeah, Abhiram came in and he did what he does best and what his role has been assigned, just hit the ball down the park. My favorite shot from the weekend was his six against Cornet Dry. Cornet Dry bowls a length delivery and he hits it on the up straight back into the parking lot. So it was special there. He scored 27 off of 16. And Rohan Fadki comes in at the end and just told clean things up. Got hit for 2 boundaries in his final over, comes back with the toe crushing Yorker to end the game. So I thought that was really phenomenal to see from those Raptors players.
Another team that has a couple of U21, U19 players that performed in the clutch is the East Bay Blazers, who you mentioned some of their performers already. Now, they needed to win to stay ahead of Seattle. And it looks like right now they're the favorites to clinch that second spot in the West. And they wouldn't be there, you could argue, if it hadn't been for their emerging players this past week.
Yeah, you mentioned Seattle had jumped them in the standings, so they had to get 2 wins. And, it's never easy when you need those wins. And I thought Sanjay Krishnamurti, who in the first match didn't really have the biggest of impacts, came back really nice in the second match against the Hollywood Master Blasters, scored, again, 75 off of 25, took 2 wickets and just gave up 10 runs in 3 overs. A phenomenal economy there. And then Saideep Ganesh, who came in, batted well against SoCal when they needed someone to step up alongside David White, 51 from 32 for him. And he scored 17 off 18 in the second match as well to get 68 from 50 on the weekend. So again, clutch situations, these youngsters have just started to really perform.
The team is looking really good, but man, the SoCal Lashings really gave them a run for their money, putting up a target of 192 for them to chase down in the game on Sunday. They really needed that innings from Saideep Ganesh to set the table. That Blazers team is probably a little bit overlooked, and they're fantastic. They're better than last year's Blazers team, if you ask me. And that team was really good. I kept picking them, if you'll remember, picking them to make the playoffs all season long. But yeah, I think they look a little bit better now. So now we have those guys who have contributed. We talked about Heath, who had a great week. Well, who's your emerging player of the week?
Yeah, I think it's a name that we've said a couple of times. Before I get to that, though, I do want to shout out Lex Barrack, who did take 2 wickets, gave up just 9 runs in 3.4 overs. I just don't think he had enough, didn't get enough chances to top our DafaNews emerging player of the week in Sanjay Krishnamurti for 75 off of 25, taking 2 wickets in his 7 overs. I thought he was really exceptional over the week.
Yeah, I think that's a really close call between the players that you mentioned. Saideep coming through in probably the bigger game, but the way that Krishnamurti kind of, crushed the other team, it's hard to overlook his output. Yeah, he was fantastic. He was just hitting 6s all over the place. This is what we're used to seeing from him from last season. So it's nice to see him back in the runs at this rate. And obviously, every game he bowls, he tends to do really well. He hasn't had many bad games with the ball. So yeah, congratulations, Sanjay. It's always a blast watching you perform big, and you are the DafaNews Emerging Player of the Week for Week 7. Last year we did a lot more of, hey, who's the player to watch out for this week? This year we haven't done that as much. Who's your player to watch out for this week?
Well, I think all the actions at Church Street Park, I think that's where we're looking at some of the biggest games of the weekend. And again, the playoff push is going to be huge. And I think Aditya Badal is another name to watch out. I think he's been so consistent. And I just think he had, a good weekend last week. And I think he's only been getting better. And I think that now, with that batting display going back to Church Street Park, I think he's going to have such a big impact to play because the field is just a little bit bigger. That turf slows things down, and his ability to bowl cutters, I think he's going to be a guy to watch out for this weekend.
Yeah, I think that's a safe bet. Now, we both get to see him a lot. I think I texted you. I wasn't even worried when he came in.
Yeah.
When 8 down, he comes in, and I was like, they only need 30 some runs. He can get this. But yeah, I mean, he's a fantastic player. I talked about him a lot on the show, so I'm not going to talk about him too much right now, but we both think very highly of him. You don't always see his impact in the score sheet because of the role that he plays. He's not going to lead the league in runs. He's not going to lead the league in wickets. He might one day lead the league in catches because he's a phenomenal fielder. He's right in that mold of cricketer that I tend to appreciate the most, the Kareem Agors, the Ray Ramrattans, you know, the guys who can do a little bit of everything and are athletic, and they always make a fun play that makes you go, wow, in the field. I think my player to watch this week is going to be Sammy Sahil, who we awarded a couple weeks back. He only played one game this past weekend, but in his 3 overs, he only gave up 16 runs, didn't take a wicket, but he's been consistent for that Tigers team. They're going to need to win this weekend to make the playoffs. So the pressure is on, and I think he's going to be one of the players that if they do make the playoffs, they're going to look and they're going to say, we made the playoffs thanks to this guy, you know, amongst others. But I my player to watch this week is going to be Sammy Sahil. Great choice with the Raptors guy. So we got a Raptor and a Tiger. Thanks for joining. Lots of great action coming ahead this weekend. A lot of high impact emerging players will be at their best. Let's hope this weekend to make a big impact on their teams and get their teams into the playoffs. Thanks again for watching.